Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to go through some new manga releases. I do a similar style video over on my main channel. Whenever there's new fantasy releases, I try to dedicate some time to those. And I thought it'd be fun to do the same thing for some new manga releases. And the three that I'm going to be talking about would be Volume 11 of Witch Hat Atelier, Volume 10 of Spy Family, and then the fourth deluxe edition of Girl from the Other Side. I know that Girl from the Other Side's main story was completed a while ago. I came into this story through the deluxe editions, so this edition is new. The story, I know for some people they have finished it a while ago, but I still wanted to talk about it, mostly because I just really want to, I guess, just talk about how I thought it was great. When I finished it, I was like, oh my gosh, this story, and I kind of needed to see, I try to avoid seeing anybody else's thoughts before I discuss with you, because I just don't want anybody else's outside opinions to affect what I say. But I was like, I have to know what other people think. I finished this, my husband was asleep, it was late at night, and I was all emotional. And I have to be vague because this is spoiler free. But if you don't know, the setup for the story is that you follow this little girl and her teacher, who is this being, and this is the little girl, and she lives on the other side. The rest of humans live in this other area, and it would seem that there is this curse that turns people into these types of beings through touch, and it shouldn't be true that this little girl can live on the other side without having this curse come upon her, because it would be very difficult to not ever be touched by anybody or anything on the other side. And the teacher clearly loves her. He's very fatherly with her. He's very sweet. And she is his whole life, basically. He does everything he can to, of course, not touch her because he doesn't want to pass the curse on to her. But you can tell, like, you're just like, I wish he could just give her a hug sometimes, or I wish he could just carry her on his shoulders. You know, you just want her to be able to have that contact, because she is very young and she is very sweet and she's so innocent and pure. And she so badly is like, when's my aunt coming to pick me up? She just wants family. And you're like, oh, this little child starved for affection. And anyway, you see danger starts to come when it seems they're starting to believe that maybe she has some kind of cure to the curse, as she is able to live on the other side without getting it. And that puts her in danger. It seems like people want to try to take her, and you're like, no, let her and teacher be out in the woods in their little cabin baking pies, and it's just, you're like, no. So I have to say, if you like the mentor-mentee kind of parent-child relationship and stories, I actually don't feel like you see too much of that. You see mentor like somebody training in fantasy, especially. You have that character that trains people and they're like really stoic and tough, and this is not that. It's tender and it's so wholesome, and you're like, they've got it. They've figured life out. They're just enjoying each other's company, and everything is darling and precious, and I don't want anybody to come between them. So obviously weird things ensue and things come between them, and you're like, no. So this last volume finally starts to explain some things. I shouldn't say this last volume because this is more than one, but this last deluxe edition. You get some explanation, and it's kind of convoluted. It is weird, and I think that there's room for interpretation. I liked that about this. I think if somebody is accustomed to a hard magic system, or if they don't like things to get too out there and too weird, or they like things to be weird but they don't want it to be explained because then it sort of disrupts the weirdness, then I could see people taking issue with it. And I was talking about how I was curious to see, like, what do other people think? And a number of people were kind of mixed on the ending, because they're like, I'm still confused. I don't really understand. I miss when it was just like her and the guy in the woods and whatever. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I get it. But I thought the ending was really powerful. I thought it was really impactful. I think it really highlights the sacrifices people are willing to make for those that they love, and how there's a lot to do with balance in the world, the unfairness, the unjustness, how unjust the world could be, and kind of looking at things as black and white. And there often, sometimes, it seems like there's no nuance. It seems like there's no gray area. It seems like humanity can't look at things as there being something in between. It's like it has to be black and white, or it has to be this side and the other side. And so I think I'm very curious to reread it at some point and look at the symbolism. It's a pretty short story if you've not picked it up. It's not that many volumes, so I would highly recommend giving it a try. I think the art style reflects the story really well as well. And it's interesting because toward these last few volumes, I was really impressed. Some of the panels, I'm like, wow, that art's like really good. And what I mean by that is so much of it's very minimal to a point where sometimes you're like, what am I looking at? Because it's so black and white. And it's so minimal that you don't always get a lot of detail. But there's a few panels toward the end where there's an exceptional amount of detail. And it reminded me a tiny bit, a couple of the panels, especially of the people, of Vagabond. So I'm like, what? I'm curious the capabilities of this artist. Like, it's clearly a choice to make the art as minimalistic as they have. And I think that it suited the story. And I almost am like, did they have to hold back to tell this? Anyway, point is, I highly recommend Girl from the Other Side. I thought it was fantastic. It was so good, so sad, so beautiful, so sweet. I loved it. But it's got some... It's emotional. It's an emotional story, and I loved it. The next two, I mean, I love all of these, so I'm excited because it's mostly just a gushing video. This volume of Spy Family, the beginning of this new volume, is so good. Probably the best thing in all of Spy Family thus far. And I think if you've not heard of the setup for Spy Family, it's very silly. I like how silly it is. I like how ridiculous it is. You follow a world where it's kind of Cold War-esque, and you follow a spy who is trying to gain information, and he, in order to try and get certain information from a political figure who's known for never really making public appearances, he has to try and create a family. He has to get married and have a daughter, or a child, but it turns out to be a daughter in the story. And the reason is that this very important political figure only really ever makes appearances at his child's school. And so the idea is Lloyd, the spy, is like, okay, if I can get a child into this school and then I can go to some of the events, I might be able to see that other person and get information on them. But he does not realize that the little girl he's adopted is a telepath, so she can read people's minds, and she does not often do very well with the information that she gets, and sometimes she does very well, and sometimes she kind of saves the world, but nobody knows it. And then he doesn't know that the woman he has married is an assassin, and she doesn't know he's a spy. The little girl knows that, both of them, that those are their professions, but she can't say anything, because then that would reveal to each other, and also it would reveal that she can read people's minds, and she's like, I can't let anybody know that I can read people's minds. It's very ridiculous and so silly, and it often, I feel like, pokes fun at manga in general. It kind of pokes fun at like sports manga, and it pokes fun at just how people can be so dramatic and leveling up and the power-ups in their moves and things like that. So it has a lot of fun. And this particular volume, it's like, it was so unexpected to have it be opening the way it did that I was really impressed by it, because Lloyd is obviously very dedicated to being a spy, and he does not want the world to experience war like he experienced when he was a little boy. And so then you actually see those experiences, and I was like, wow, that was done so exceptionally well, and it really, it highlights his character even more. And because it's such a stark difference to the usual silliness, it almost hit even harder than it would if the whole thing was very depressing. It's similar to how I feel about Full Metal Alchemist, where these are very different stories, but Full Metal is, for me, the perfect balance of ridiculous and emotional. And those emotional moments are made even more emotional based off the fact that it's such a contrast to the ridiculous, and I would say that was true of this volume of Spy Family. If you haven't checked out Spy Family, it's so much fun. It is such a good time. I never want it to end. I just think it's the best. So excited to be reading more of that. And now I have to wait, though. I think the next volume comes out on my birthday next year. So I'm like, oh, why do I have to wait so long? But I will. Obviously, I can't do anything else about that. Then Witch Hat Atelier. Talk about volumes that take forever to come out. I don't mind, because the art in this, I'm like, you probably need plenty of time. The art in this is so good. I know I always say it. I always highlight the art, but oh my gosh. And there's one, I don't know how much of the art I can show from from manga because of copyright reasons, and that's very understandable because I know there's issues online with people putting stuff out, and, you know, there's issues with manga artists, storytellers not getting what they deserve because people don't want to pay, and I'm like, the amount of effort that goes into this. But the paneling is just, it's so good, so I really want to try to show you one of them. I also don't want to spoil anything, but this is probably not the best example, but where you see, like, it starts small, and then it's getting, like, bigger into this full page illustration, and the way that this art here kind of goes into these. It's not the best example because she's really creative with her panels sometimes, but it's not even like that's the only exceptional thing. It's also just the art itself is so good and so whimsical and beautiful. This particular volume, to me, I was expecting a little bit more as far as where things left off in volume 10. I thought we were going to continue to really hit the heavier things. This one focuses more on the magic, what magic can do for people, and then it does slap you in the face with, like, how lazy human beings are and how much we don't care about things unless it positively impacts us, even when we are already among some of the most privileged, well-off people. It's like, if we have to do something that's even a slight inconvenience to help others, we're like, ugh, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, oh, of course, because this series is always providing really fantastic commentary within the creativity and imagination, and within all the wholesome things as well. So it's very hard-hitting and wholesome at the same time. Different in a very different way than Girl from the Other Side, but it is, I can't think of another story that's more whimsical than this, but also has that wonderful, those moral conundrums. It just does them so fantastically, and there is so much ambiguity when it comes to who's right about things. And I don't think that it tells you how to feel. I think it very much invites you to ask the hard questions yourself. It kind of presents society as it is, various different issues within society, and they'll do it through this magical world, but obviously there are parallels to our own. And I just think it does it so well. I can't think of another story that has a combination of those quite like this does. Not my favorite volume, though, I will say. I think the art was fantastic, of course, as always. And I did like the power of friendship that we get in this. And I did like some of the growth for one of the characters that we see. However, I don't think it was quite as hard-hitting as previous installments were, but I continue to just think that this story is incredible. If you don't know the setup, we follow a young girl who is discovering more about magic, and her reason for... Initially, she just was captivated by magic, but then it's actually become so much more pressing that she learned more about it because somebody that she loves has been affected by magic, and she wants to do what she can, not just to help that person, but to help society as a whole and make people's lives better and more wonderful through magic, which is very sweet. You also see a lot to do with the adult characters who are their mentor figures, the people that should be guiding them. Sometimes there's sadly situations where the adults are not very good mentors, and you're like, oh, this is so heartbreaking, but anyway, it's fantastic. Like I said, not my favorite volume in the series, but still, I will never get tired of Witch Hat, I don't think. Just like with Spy Family, I'm like, it can go on for forever. I just want more and more and more of that art. It's so stunning. So that's it, though, for some new manga. I'm very curious if you like these particular stories. Do you have any other recommendations, not just for me, but for anybody else who comes to this video and maybe also likes these same stories? I just want to know if you have more recommendations. That's basically it, because if I can get more like these, I'm all about it. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.